This computer. All right. So I have Finn Hildebrandt here. And Finn, do you want to just do a quick little introduction of who you are? And if you wanted to say how I know you, if you wanted.
Yeah. Yeah, so my name's Finn. I'm 19. I have a little brother who is 16 who has some pretty severe disabilities. I grew up with Jenny's older son, Ian. We were best friends when we were little till pretty much till I moved when I was 10. So that's a little bit about me.
Awesome. Well, and as I said before we started recording, then I'm just excited to be able to have this conversation with you and thinking about, you were just 4 when I met you and your little brother was just
Little,
2 at the time, or maybe not even 2 when I first met you.
about 6 months in.
Yeah. So how old were you when you realized that Rowan had needs that were different than some of your friends' siblings?
It's hard to say because I was so young. I'd
Yeah.
probably say I really started to notice it when I was, I don't know, maybe 6 or 7.
Okay.
Kind of once I got into like kindergarten and first grade and realized that he was a little bit different than others. And so I'd say probably about 6 or 7.
Okay. And what were some of the hard things about having a sibling with differing needs, especially when you were younger, like under 7th grade?
I think probably the biggest thing was like the best way I can describe it is it's like having a sibling without having a sibling. It's like being an only child while also having a sibling at the same time. Because you have a sibling, but I've never fought with him over clothes or who gets to play Xbox, or really the only thing I ever had to fight for was attention from my parents. Like that was the biggest thing. And I noticed it too. We always used to go to the beach in the summer to go visit my grandparents. And I got really good at making friends because if I didn't go make friends, I didn't really have anybody to hang out with. So
So,
that was kind of the big things. And it was, I always used to be really shy about bringing people over just because I didn't really know how they'd respond. And it's like, that's my little brother, and don't really want to bring somebody that I don't absolutely trust around him. And that was kind of more as I got older. I wasn't really thinking about that when I was little, but I know I used to be shy about having people come over because I didn't want to be like, oh, your brother's different or stuff like that.
when do you think that changed for you? Like, when do you think you became a little shyer about having somebody come over?
Probably as Rowan got a little older, because
Okay.
when he was still so young,
Mhm.
I don't really remember a whole lot before probably, I don't know, I was 7 or 8 years old. That
Yeah. Yeah.
was kind of when I started to get a picture of it. And then the older I got and kind of understood how people could be and stuff like that, didn't really want to just bring anybody over to the house. And I don't know, I was always just kind of nervous bringing people over because I didn't really know how they'd react or if they'd think any different of me or.
Yeah. Well, and I think too, having the fact that he's your younger brother too, there's a period of time where you may not always know like what the child might be capable of, right? Like someone might just, when you were 5, they might just think, oh, he's just his little brother and not think much of it.
Yeah.
But yeah, as you're right, when he gets older,
Mhm.
it might be more apparent to them. Did you ever have any issue like when friends did come over? Did you ever have any hard situations that you
Not
wish
that
would
I can
have been
think
different?
of. I was always really selective about who I would bring over, and normally I tried to go to other people's houses, so I don't really think I've ever had any issues. And everybody that ever like anybody that I'm close with these days, they all love Ro. They'll put in effort to talk to Ro and talk to and be involved with him. And
Yeah.
anybody that I actually trust enough and like enough to bring to my house, they know who Ro is and they love him.
Yeah, yeah. Thinking back that the only thing that you felt like you really had to like fight for was attention for your parents. What do you feel like was helpful with that when you were growing up? Like, did you feel like you weren't getting enough attention, or do you feel like your parents were able to kind of maneuver that okay? Or just how did you make sense of that, or how did your family
They
make sense of
did, they did a really good job of it. When we were younger and Ro was much easier, not easier to be around, but he wasn't quite as much work as he is now. We used to do a lot more things as a family.
that?
But as he got older, it was a little harder to take him out to dinner or go on family vacation. So it turned into a lot of, my parents were really good about like making time for us to do stuff one on one. So I couldn't tell you the last time I went out to dinner with both of my parents, but they were always really good about, like, dad and I would go out to dinner and go see a movie, or like when we moved to Maryland, dad and I would go out jet skiing on the weekends, or like normally mom and I would go out to dinner and see a movie, or so they I wouldn't say I've really had to fight for their attention. That was just like the one thing I'd say that was kind of affected by that,
Yep.
was I didn't always have as much attention because they had to focus on row, and row's pretty much a full-time job.
Yeah. I think that in some ways you might have a deeper connection with your parents because you
Oh,
maybe
absolutely.
had more one-on-one time because they had to be more
Absolutely.
intentional about that. So that's very cool. And certainly being such close friends with your family, like I saw them doing that and being
Yeah.
intentional with that as well. So it's neat to hear that that was your perception too,
Yeah,
right? Like
they
as
were very
parents, we
good.
don't always know like what are our kids viewing with this, but
Yeah, they made sure that I never felt unincluded or that they weren't giving me enough attention. That was just the one thing I kind of remember is, like, again, going to the beach, they'd have to be focused on row. If it was just mom, she couldn't really come play with me all the time when I was little or do whatever.
yeah, you were very good at making friends. Like
Yeah, that's
even before the age you mentioned, like you were a very outgoing, I mean, you still are very outgoing, verbal, engaging kid. And I'm sure that helped give you a lot of resiliency as you were, having to make friends at the beach. How did your parents talk to you about your brother's differences?
I don't remember a whole when I was little, they were pretty kind of vague about it, and like obviously I knew, and
Yeah.
I mean, probably till I was 12 or 13, I didn't really have the brain strength to exactly comprehend
Mhm.
everything about it. So they kind of gave me like the basic rundown when I was little, and then the older I got, they'd explain more, and I understood more on my own. And so I don't know. I don't remember them ever like sitting down and saying, "Hey, look, this is this," because it's all I've known since I was 3.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's kind of like it wasn't like one day it just changed and I had to adapt to it. That was all I knew since I was a toddler.
Yeah, yep, yeah, yep, that makes sense. How do you think having a sibling with differing needs has shaped who you are?
I think it's definitely made me more patient for one, because anybody that works with people with special needs or have a sibling with special needs or a parent of them know that patience, you have to have infinite patience with them. And there's some days that you don't, and that's okay. And there's days that I don't have the patience for him. There's patience that mom and dad don't have the patience for him. So you learn how to work together really well as a family. I think it also, you don't have time to be mad when
Mm,
you have a sibling with special needs. Like, they're gonna do stuff that's gonna piss you off. They're gonna, in Rose's case, they might hurt you if he freaks out.
mhm,
But or if you get in a fight with your parents or something, like if I got in a fight with mom and dad, you don't have time for that. Like,
mhm,
you can't be mad and pouting all day. At least in my family, you couldn't be mad and pouting all day because there's stuff that's got to get done. You
mhm,
got to take care of Roe. You'll
mhm,
switch off for a little bit, cool down, go do whatever chills you out, and come back and just circle back and apologize for whatever happened or whatever need be.
mhm.
So I can't hold a grudge to save my life. I don't know how much of that is to do with Rowan,
Yeah.
but it's just like being mad or upset. It feels like a waste of time to me. And
Mm,
not knocking anybody that isn't like that. That's just kind of how I ended up. Is it's
yeah.
like somebody does something that makes you mad or upsets you. You take time. Like, I want to talk about it, get it out there, apologize for it, and then just get done with it and move on to the next thing.
Yeah. I think
Uh,
that's a really cool perspective to have, and it would make sense that
yeah,
it very likely could have come from that it's just, and you have a kind of a almost a bigger world perspective
yeah.
that many people don't get. Um, so yeah, that's really cool. Anything else that you think helped shape you or has shaped you?
I think it's definitely made me like more understanding. Like I can make friends with anybody. I don't
Mm,
really, it doesn't really matter what background you're from or what ethnicity you are, or it's kind of how I ended up turning out. Is it when you're little, you don't care what anybody is. You just want to go talk and make friends, and that's kind of, I may get closer with some people than others, but especially just in like working, I've always worked in restaurants and like customer service jobs, so it helps to be able to talk to anybody
yeah.
about anything.
Mhm.
So definitely just more understanding and kind of, I'm pretty good at if something doesn't go my way, I can adapt to that. And because a lot of stuff didn't go my way when I was little and stuff was always changing. So you might have a plan for the day. Rowan's having a bad day or having seizures or stuff. There goes your plan for the day. So just
Yeah,
got good at adapting to things and
yeah.
not letting things changing really totally mess up my schedule or day or however I was feeling that day.
Mhm. That's awesome. I think of, I mean, I've been able to observe you obviously with Rowan when you guys were young, but then
Yeah.
also, just a few years ago when we came to visit you in Maryland, and just watching your interactions with him and understanding it almost seems like how a parent interacts with their child. Like you really understand his cues, and when he's trying to say something that a lot of people your age, I feel like wouldn't necessarily have that,
Yeah.
unless they have worked with kids a lot. And certainly, if you choose to become a parent one day, I would imagine like some of that's going to feel so natural to you
Yeah.
because you've been doing that so much. And I even remember when I'd be caring for you guys, if with you for you and Rowan, and if Rowan did something that was confusing to me, even when you were just 5, you were able to tell me, "Oh, this is what he needs," or "This is
Yeah.
what he's trying to tell you," which is super impressive. Like that's a really impressive thing. So even if you don't have much memory of that time, like you were already really on. And so it's
You have to be with him. You always got to be on your game.
yeah, yeah, for sure. Yeah. What are some tips that you could give um I guess parents that are currently raising, younger kids, with when they have a child with special needs, but then also have other children? What are some tips that you might have, just kind of looking back on things you really love that your parents did? If there's anything you wish could have been different, and I'm going to preface this that no matter how wonderful parents are, there still might be things
Yeah.
like that might change. Like it's not a knock on parents. Like I know my kids will have things that they wish I did differently, and that's just part of life. So
Yeah. I'd say definitely if you're a parent with a kid with special needs and you have other children as well, make sure they know that you love and care about them and make time for them and show them that they're not the backup. Like make them feel important and special and do certain things for them. Take some time one on one with them because that was a big thing with my parents. And it doesn't have to be big things, but like find something that you and your kid can do together and you both love. Like what my mom does with me is very different than what my dad does with me, and it doesn't always have to be together, and it can go a long way and just making a kid feel appreciated and loved and not excluded. i'd say I'd say one tip kind of on the flip side of that is Rose's circumstance is kind of unusual because he wasn't born with it. um But in the event that a child does have a traumatic brain injury or something like that that they weren't born with, I'd say the biggest thing with my parents is they were super, super, super overprotective with me and super strict. When I mean, in the long run, the strict part paid off because I was kind of a dumb kid when I was in middle school and early high school years, and I totally understand why they do it now, and I appreciate them for it. But just trust your kids to make smart decisions and not don't helicopter parent them. I'd say would probably be like the kind of the broadest way to put it.
yeah, yeah.
Kids have to get hurt to learn. They have to scrape their knee. They have to try new things. I've given my mom a million heart attacks doing stuff because I just happen to have a fondness for things that go fast, whether it be dirt bikes, or jet skis, or motorcycles or snowmobiles. So that's kind of been my outlet for stuff. And especially for the kids, try and find an outlet for them.
Mm.
Don't be afraid to send them to therapy if that helps, or if they have something that they love. I tried therapy, it didn't work great for me. My best therapy has always been music and speed.
Mhm. Speed, I like that.
Imagine, I
Not
just
the drug. Moving fast, just to be clear.
going fast. I love anything with a motor, anything that can faster something is, the more I like it.
Mhm.
So that's always been the best therapy for me. Night drives with the windows down, which you can't always do when you're younger.
Yeah, yeah,
But I don't know. I don't remember what I always just music has always been a big thing for me. Music's always been super important. That's kind of what I would do if I was mad or upset or anything. Just go listen to music for a while or go outside or
mm,
so just find something that your kid loves, and if you know it helps them if they're having a hard day, even if you might not be the fondest thing of it, as
mm,
long as it's not something that's going to really hurt them,
right.
get them in trouble, try to support them, try to just make them feel important and that the things that they're trying to do matter, and
Yeah,
not that their sibling takes all the attention, if that makes sense.
yeah. When you said that you didn't do you did some stupid things in middle school and high school, super common, right? Like it's kind of the time to do those things. So that is just for the parents that are listening, like that's a super normal time for people to make not
Yeah,
the best decisions. And and I don't know much about those things at all. Your mom and I haven't discussed those things, but um I think that the relationship that you have had with your parents probably helped when things weren't going well for you guys to be able to regroup together. The other thing I wanted to comment about that is when you said just feeling like they were a little, maybe sometimes felt a little bit more protective than you maybe felt like they needed. It's good that you're able to have the perspective of why, and maybe you
yeah,
didn't always have that, but that's totally makes sense, right? And so I think that's super super useful as well. I'm thinking of you are one that I love the idea of like nature therapy and
mhm,
just like being outside and having someone that's kind of guiding um if a child is trying to work through things. And I didn't know as much about nature therapy when my kids were little, but I'm thinking about how you played in nature and like how you dig and like you'd be
yeah.
moving those trucks in there, like that had to have been therapeutic for you.
Oh, absolutely.
We didn't call it that at the time, but I
It
think
was, it was just me being me when I was a little kid.
yes,
And I
yeah,
think part of it too, like the years that I was in the most trouble was probably the worst year was like sixth grade for me.
yeah,
And
yeah,
I got in a lot of trouble that year, but it was also the year after I'd moved.
yeah, yeah,
And I had just moved. I was in a new middle school, and the crowd at the school that I was going to at the time was very different from the crowd at Stonebridge and that I'd spent the first however many years in school with.
yeah,
I kind of got into some kids that were always getting in trouble. So
yeah.
just gotta kind of be aware of that. And
Mm,
looking back, like I wouldn't say I hated my parents for it when I was younger, but I used to get so mad at how strict they were for your
mm,
stuff, and mostly like social media and stuff like that.
yeah.
And now looking back, I'm like, yeah, I totally understand that. I was stupid and did dumb things when I was younger, and every kid does.
Yeah,
Some
yeah.
kids are going to be angels compared to others, and I know there's a lot of kids that are 100 times worse than I was.
Mm, yeah.
But the
But
other
it,
thing, too, especially like with my case, is I'm the oldest, and I have a younger sibling that had a traumatic brain injury. So it's like mom and dad were learning everything with me
yeah.
while also being overprotective because of Rowan, my little brother.
Mhm.
And so that's another thing is if your kid's the oldest, you got to let them try stuff. That's the only way for them to learn, and they're going to fail. They have to fail. You don't learn without failing.
Yeah. And it sounds like your parents were, despite how busy they would have been with your brother, that they were still able to be in tune enough to know, like, oh, something's maybe going on with Finn. Maybe we need to like tune in and kind of
Yeah,
figure
no,
this
he was
out.
okay.
And
I
oh my
mean,
gosh.
mom having her PhD in psychology might have helped a little bit.
A little bit, yeah.
Another thing that one thing that mom and I used to I wouldn't say we get into fights, but probably like the only time my mom and I would ever butt heads is the psychologist in her, she wants to know what's wrong as soon as she finds out something wrong and fix it,
Mhm.
and can't stop until knows it's fixed. And that's not how I work whatsoever. If I'm upset about something, I'm going to take time. I'm going to do whatever I got to do to deal with it. And then I'll tell you. And if you pressure me when I'm not ready to tell you, it's going to make me want to tell you even less. And we used to butt heads about it a lot. And I remember one day, I think I just kind of finally snapped and I was like, Mom, what don't you understand that you pressuring me to tell you is going to make me shut down and have no interest in telling you?
Yeah. Yeah.
She learned that was probably 3 or 4 years ago.
Yeah.
And it was a pretty quick turnaround that she realized if I was upset about something, she'd ask me about it. She'd
Mhm.
ask me for the brief details,
Yeah.
and I'd either be okay with her telling her then, or I'd say, I don't want to talk about it right now.
Yeah.
I'd say 75% of the time, if I say I don't want to talk about it, within an hour, I'll come back and explain it to her.
Yeah.
I just need, because most of the time she'll ask me in the heat of the moment. I don't want to talk about it right then because I'm already upset about it and I don't want to get more upset. So I'll calm down, I'll come back, tell her about it, and it's done.
Yeah.
So that was a big thing, is just not trust your kid to tell you when they're ready.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. And I love that she was able to respond so quickly to that when you were able to talk about that. And I'm thinking of that, one of your biggest recommendations was having that one-on-one time. And I think being able to find that one-on-one time. And some of that I know might involve asking for some support, right? Like
Yeah,
that's kind of where I would come in, right? Like I'd help out with Rowan or your grandma would help out with Rowan. So you guys, because sometimes parents are working, right? And so one of them could then go off and all of that time together, that one-on-one time helps kind of ready you for those middle school years. So when things get big, because they tend to around that time, that you have that relationship there that they're able to connect
yeah.
and
And it kind of shifted as I got older because as Ro got older, it was always hard to keep babysitters or kid sitters as he got bigger.
yeah.
And the past couple years, I'm the only person. We have one lady that comes and helps out during the day, but she's never one on one with Ro.
Okay. Yeah.
Other than my parents, I'm the only person that is ever one on one with Ro, unless he's at school where he has a full team with him. So
Yeah.
really the only time mom and dad get to go out is if I watch him. So normally like once a week I would watch him, and so that was one of the big things, especially with how big he is. Like it's so hard to train people and ask people to take that step that hey, you might get hit, bit, smacked, spit at. Like
Yeah. I
it's
remember one of the last time before you moved when I was watching you guys, and you didn't need a whole lot of caretaking because you and
no,
Ian were playing together. You, Ian and Maya were playing together. But I'm not a very big adult, right? I'm only 5'2", and he was already starting to get a little bit big for me to do some of the tasks. And that was really hard for me because I really enjoyed being able to watch him and
yeah,
help your family out and be there for you guys. But it's not even just kind of some of the cognitive things, but the size piece
yeah,
too.
yeah.
And
That's why back to the mom finally had to like admit that she can't get him off the floor by himself if he's having a bad day, and that was hard for her to admit because
yeah,
mom never says I can't do anything. She'll
right,
find a way to
right.
do it, but he is too big and he is too strong. And
Uh,
his good arm is just as strong as mine is, just about. Just
yeah,
imagine doing everything that you do with two arms with one arm.
right,
So
right.
that kid is strong.
Yeah. Well, and I had met what how you described your mom, how she's never going to admit it takes a lot for her to admit that she can't do
Yeah,
something. And I think that's a really common thing of parents, especially moms of kids with special needs.
yeah,
And for her to be able to say, okay, I actually can't do this, because sometimes when we push ourselves to do something, we might get really hurt, or mentally we might go overboard, and then who are we going to be for any of our kids at that point? And so
yeah,
um, that too, as just parents are thinking about things, to be able to admit like, okay, this is too hard right now, and how can I get help? So
yeah. That
um,
was that was a big thing with me coming out here. Is like the longest I'd ever been away from home, I think, was shoot, I don't know, maybe a week.
Mhm.
And I think this summer was the first time I ever went away from home for more than like a sleepover at a friend's house without a parent. For went on a couple trips this summer and was gone for like a long weekend with friends and stuff. And kind of it was good preparation for me moving out here because it was like, and especially with COVID, because they pretty much had an extra year of me being home all the time. Because if we had had regular school, my senior year, I'd have been working, I'd have been playing lacrosse, I'd have been going out with friends and going to parties and stuff. And
Yeah.
none of that happened. So pretty quickly it went from I'm home every single day of the week pretty much to, oh shoot, you're moving 2,000 miles across the country in less than a month.
Mhm.
And they've been like, we knew you were gonna leave a big hole behind when you left, but we didn't realize quite how big it was. And like they went out by themselves for dinner the other night for the first time, and I think this was a couple weeks ago at some point before my grandparents left for Florida. But like when I watch Earl, they can leave whenever they want. I can handle him. I can do everything with him. But they went out after they got him in bed already, and then grandparents came over and watched him, and he was already in bed half asleep. And that's just there's really nobody else that they trust to be okay on their own, and they know that Rowan's safe, and they know that I'm safe and can handle him and can do everything with him.
Yeah.
And I mean, I'm not you guys can't see how tall I am, but I'm 6'3" and in good shape. So and it's still hard for me to move him sometimes. It's especially as they get older, it can be a challenge.
Yeah. I love that it really sounds like the three of you guys are a team though, and
Oh,
I'm
absolutely.
sure they've missed you so much. And
Yeah.
I'm sure it's kind of sparking discussions that we don't have to go into now, but just sparking discussions of kind of what does the future hold and what does this look as time goes on. But um I'm gonna like round off the interview here, Finn, but then stay on just so I can say give you a proper goodbye. But it was awesome to have you on here today, Finn. And you're an incredible young man. And it was just thank you for sharing your experience. And I know it'll be wonderful for families to be able to hear that. So thank you.
Thank you for having me. I hope it helps any of you guys that are watching this and can use some of these tips and pointers and help stuff get easier. It does get easier. It gets harder, but it also gets easier.
Awesome. Thank you, Finn.
Of course.